His doctor told him not to. His wife begged him not to do it. But on July 3rd, 1981, Ross Martin didn't care about either of them and paid with his life. It was 40 years before Hollywood said anything about what really killed TV's best cover artist. Now, shocking medical records show the horrible truth about how the Wild Wild West star died on that tennis court. Not even his best friend Robert Conrad could help him. The company that made a lot of money off of him wouldn't even come to his funeral. Ross Martin was born on March 22, 1920, in Grodek, Poland. His full name was Martin Rosenblatt. He was born into a Polish-Jewish family that lived in an area that was unstable after World War I. His father, Isaac Rosenblatt, was a tinsmith. Sarah Lerner, his mother, took care of the house. They were facing rising anti-Semitism and insecurity, just like many other Jewish families in Eastern Europe. Because they wanted a better life, they made the tough choice to leave everything behind and start over in the United States. Grodek was a part of Poland when Martin was born. But when the lines changed after World War II, it became part of Ukraine. Things were always changing in the area, adding uncertainty to life. His name would change too. Martin Rosenblatt changed his name to Ross Martin in the end, a name that fit his new life in the U.S. He was only a baby when the trip across the ocean began. In Danzig on August 29, 1920, his family got on the steamship New Rochelle. They got to Ellis Island on September 18th after being at sea for almost 3 weeks. His name was written down by immigration officials as Marcus Rosenblatt, which is a small change that often happens during the paperwork process. The Ellis Island. It was the first place that millions of refugees went to start over. Most people who traveled in steerage class were like the Rosenblatt family. Before they could come to the United States, they had to pass strict physical and legal checks. Once they were free to live, they moved to the Bronx, which is full of foreigners trying to start over. Ross Martin learned to speak many languages well before he learned English as he grew up in this world. In his own home, he spoke Russian, Polish, and Yiddish. After that, he learned Spanish and French. English. One of his best qualities was being able to speak many languages, which helped him later in life as an actress. He even spoke Russian in some parts when he played Artemis Gordon in Wild Wild West, putting his own stamp on his acts. Martin did very well in school. Even though growing up in a working-class immigrant home was hard, he went to City College of New York, which is a great school known for helping a lot of first-generation kids. With a magna cum laude grade, he proved that he was one of the smartest people in his class. He then got his law degree from a National University School of Law at George Washington University. He looked like he would have a solid job in business or law in the future, but that wasn't the path he picked. He chose to be an actor instead of a lawyer. In the 1940s, he and Bernie West worked together as Ross and West, a comedy pair. They did shows all over upstate New York, in vaudeville and nightclubs, where they mixed quick jokes with physical humor. People loved them, and they were very good at time. After the fact, West called Martin a comic genius because he was so good at making people laugh. The pair didn't last long, though. Martin wanted to find more work in the entertainment business, while West started writing and directing. West would work on comedies like In the Family in the future, but Martin had already moved on to bigger things. He was on Broadway by 1953. What was his first big role? It was in Hazel Flag, a musical spoof based on the 1937 movie Nothing Sacred. He played Dr. Egelhofer in a show at the Mark Hellinger Theater that ran for 190 performances. Jules Stein wrote the music for the show, and Bob Hilliard wrote the words. Martin was unique because he could be funny and dramatic at the same time. Sharing the stage with players like Helen Gallagher and Thomas Mitchell, he showed that he was more than just a comedian. He soon became well known on the radio after Broadway opened up new doors for him. Martin became famous for his voice on radio shows like Cavalcade of America and Dimension X in the late 1940s and early 1950s. He was able to switch between accents and characters with amazing ease, which led to him having his own show, The Ross Martin Show. His ability to play different parts was shown in every episode. Sometimes he switched voices so smoothly that viewers didn't even realize it was the same person. He became a popular voice actress because he could do a lot of different things, which helped him move into live TV anthologies. He was then called by Hollywood. He made his movie start in George Powell's Conquest of Space in 1955. It was a science fiction epic about the first trip humans took to Mars. He played Sergeant Andre Fodor, a supporting figure in a story with groundbreaking special effects and deep themes about life and death. Even though the movie wasn't a big hit, it was a big step forward for Martin. After only a few years, he was in The Colossus of New York, 1958, another sci-fi movie. His career in Hollywood was taking off, and this was just the start of a trip that would last for almost 30 years. When Ross Martin played Enamo on Blake Edwards' CBS show Mr. Lucky in 1959, it was his big break. Enamo was a smart gun runner who worked with John Vivian's smooth-talking gambler. The show took place on a mobile casino, which made it both exciting and dangerous. Along with Martin's dry sense of humor, Enamo stood out right away. In the first episode, Lucky's plan to smuggle drugs goes badly when police find a hidden stash of weapons on his boat. "We're in trouble because of how he said it. It is my job to sneak guns into the country." Set the tone for how smart his character was. Off-screen, he gave the part his own style. He made up lines on the spot and even made up his own masks. He dressed as a barman in one scene to spy on mobsters. Besides that, he made his own makeup, which became an important part of his work. People said the show was funny and had a good style, but it didn't do well with viewers and was canceled after one season. Still, reviewers paid attention. TV Guide said that Martin's acting was effortlessly charming. They liked how he could change his voice and personalities. Most importantly, Mr. Lucky put him in touch with Blake Edwards, a director who would be very important to his future success. After 3 years, Martin's act and experiment in Terror, 1962, shocked people. He played Garland Red Lynch, a psychopath with asthma who scares bank worker Kelly Sherwood, who was played by Lee Remick. It was very different from the charming Indomo. Martin studied an asthmatic childhood friend of Lynch's to get better at Lynch's creepy labored breathing. He also insisted on doing all of his own moves, like a brutal garage attack scene that was filmed in just one take. The end result was scary. One of the scariest parts is when Lynch makes Sherwood listen on the phone as he chokes her friend. With each second that goes by, his breathing gets heavier. Some reviewers said it reminded them of Anthony Perkins's turn as Norman Bates in Psycho. The New York Times said Lynch was a master at making danger seem subtle. Later, director David Lynch, who had nothing to do with Martin, said that the character was the inspiration for Twin Peaks' Killer Bob. Martin was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for the part, which is a rare honor for a bad guy in a movie. He almost turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast, but it turned out to be one of the most important roles of his career. Martin showed in The Great Race, 1965, that he could make a bad guy as funny as he could make them scary. He played Baron Rolf von Stupp is a sneaky aristocrat in the made-up country of Carpania who is trying to take power. Blake Edwards directed the movie, which also stars Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, but Martin stole the show every time he was in it. A fight between his character and Curtis's hero, Leslie, is one of the best parts of the movie. With a grin, the Baron says, "Do you want a man's weapon? How good are you with a saber?" Martin's funny tie was perfect before he started a beautiful but silly sword fight. He even made up lines during the famous 10-minute pie fight, which had more than 4,000 pies and was very hectic. In a later joke, he said, "I've never been so deliciously embarrassed." He was praised by many. Variety said that his acting was deliciously suave, and said that he dominated every scene without any trouble. The movie cost $12 million to make, which was the most ever spent on a comedy at the time. It proved Martin could play with Hollywood's biggest stars. Martin showed he could do anything as Enamo from 1959 to 1965. He was the likable prankster. It was impossible to sleep when he played Garland Lynch. He was great at being a comic bad guy as Baron von Stupa. It was rare for someone to be able to switch between funny and scary. He said that growing up speaking more than one language and studying law gave him a critical attitude to acting. His skills were much more than just acting. Since his early days in Mr. Lucky, he had been making up characters for a long time. Blake Edwards once said that Ross could sometimes scare you and make you laugh at the same time. That was his power. One of the most unique things about him was that he could be anyone at any time. What meant to be a friend on TV changed when Ross Martin came along. From 1965 to 1969, he played Artemis Gordon on The Wild Wild West. He wasn't just James West's backup. He knew a lot about spying, was great with gadgets, and was one of the best cover artists TV had ever seen. He was so good at changing roles that even his co-star Robert Conrad didn't always know who he was until the cameras were rolling. More than 90% of his disguises were made by him. He would start from scratch in his dressing room, using wigs, prosthetics, and detailed outfits to create his looks. The team had no idea what would happen. In 1967's Night of a Vicious Valentine, he played a gravedigger who was hunched over and had bad teeth and a rubber hump. Some team members thought he was a background actor because he looked so different. His ability to hide himself went far beyond makeup. For each part, he changed his voice, movements, and mannerisms in every way. Besides English, they can speak Polish, Yiddish, Russian, French, Spanish, Italian, and German very well. He was very good at changing his accent. In Night of the Raven, 1966, he wore a waxed mustache and spoke with an over-the-top Parisian lilt to become a showy French magician. Ken Chase, who did the makeup for the show, later said that Martin was better at changing looks than most Hollywood effects teams. Martin would draw plans for disguises on napkins at lunch and then make them happen himself. His body was also pushed by the part. In 1968's Night of the Returning Dead, he played a burned-out arsonist and had to put on burn makeup all over his body for 12 hours. Even though the latex made his skin very itchy, he wouldn't stop recording. Many people thought of Lon Chaney Sr., the famous silent movie star known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, when they saw how hard he worked. In Night of the Casual Killer, 1967, he showed off one of his most impressive skills. He played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major on the violin during a tense plot scene. It wasn't just a show. He had studied at Juilliard in the 1940s and knew how to play the violin for concerts. Martin played the part live on set during the single take. The workers cheered for him from the floor. The grips were crying too. His background in singing wasn't just a fun fact. It was added to Artemis Gordon's spy ship. He put a Morse code device inside a harmonica and used it to send messages to James West while he was on the run from prison in 1966. Martin Gordon played his violin to relax when he wasn't acting. During breaks between difficult stunt scenes, he would play Bach to calm down. In a strange way, his classical training almost cost him part. Producers thought he was too sophisticated for a Western when he tried out. To show them they were wrong, he made up a scene in which Gordon played the fiddle to confuse a bar full of criminals. He got the part because of it. After that, bad things happened in 1968. Martin had a heart attack on August 17th while shooting Night of the Sabatini Death and almost died. Found that 95% of his left coronary artery was blocked. He was taken to Cedars-Sinai Hospital right away, so the show couldn't have its co-star. No matter what, his results never got worse. In 1969, he was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor, which was a big deal for a show that was often written off as silly. Just as he was becoming well-known, though, The Wild Wild West was suddenly canceled. CBS turned off the show on March 12, 1969, even though it had good numbers. The show was ranked 12th in the Nielsen ratings, but the network had to give in because of political pressure. Congress started to crack down on TV violence after the deaths of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. People were quick to target The Wild Wild West, even though Mannix, another violent CBS show, kept showing. When things went wrong, Ross Martin was at the top of his game. He almost died of a heart attack in 1968 during the 4th season of The Wild Wild West. He got better and came back to finish the show, but Hollywood no longer thought the same way about him. Insurers in the industry called him a high risk, and the big networks pulled away. Since then, Martin has had a hard time getting lead parts. In 1969, CBS canceled the show because of growing concerns about violence on TV. In 1970, he was offered the lead role in the police show Banyan, which could have helped his career. But they changed their minds after looking at his medical papers. They chose Robert Forster instead, who was younger and wasn't worried about his health. In a 1975 interview with TV Guide, Martin's agent, Harry Gold, said that studio officials were clear about their choice. They told him that Martin played art critic Dale Kingston in the 1971 movie Columbo, which was good enough to frame. Producers asked for a $250,000 insurance bond in case his health made it necessary to delay shooting. Martin had to pay for it himself because the company wouldn't pick up the tab. He was nominated for an Emmy for the part, but his pay had gone down, really badly. He made $15,000 an episode on Wild Wild West when he was at his best. In 1973, he was only getting $3,000 for a single guest spot. It wasn't just live-action roles that gave him problems. Hanna-Barbera hired him to play Dr. Paul Williams in C-Lab 2020 in 1972. Martin was replaced after only 2 shows because the studio's insurance company stepped in. He later joked, "I lost my job because I have a heartbeat." He never stopped working, even though these things went wrong. He got 87 guest roles between 1970 and 1981. He became known for playing bad guys, strange thinkers, and shady masterminds. Even though Hollywood didn't want to give him a lead part, they couldn't ignore how talented he was. In Hawaii Five-0, the man from Uncle and Love American Style, he did memorable roles that showed he could still own a scene. From the beginning, it was clear that he could change into any figure. He played a con artist who could change his face at will in the 1960 Twilight Zone episode, The Four of Us Are Dying. Later, director John Brom said that Martin made up 4 different voices for the part, such as a Brooklyn gangster and a Southern gentleman. It wasn't in the script at all. In 1971, he gave one of the most memorable acts in Columbo, which should be framed. He played the cocky art critic Dale Kingston, who killed his uncle and put the blame on his aunt. Martin researched real-life art forger Elmer Derry to make the figure even better. He was so convincing that Peter Falk, who played Columbo, broke character and said, "I hate this guy," while they were shooting. The episode's high point, where Kingston is caught by art books with fingerprints on them, got a 27.3 Nielsen rating. It got the most viewers of any episode of Columbo in the first season. He played some funny parts too. He was also good at making people laugh. In 1966, he played Professor Patrick Hudson, a scientist who makes a machine that turns water into explosives in an episode of the TV show Uncle. It was a terrible do-it-yourself job. He had to use a lot of complex terms in his speech. He didn't memorize lines. Instead, he made up most of it on the spot using physics terms from his old law school books. Later, director Joseph Sargent said that he had a reactor in his garage. It was just as exciting in Ross Martin's real life as it was in his TV parts. The man behind the characters was shaped by his life of love and loss. Each relationship left its mark on him. His wedding to Muriel Weiss took place in New York City on June 17, 1941. At the time, he was going to George Washington University to study law and working as a comedian at night. They had a daughter named Phyllis Rosenblatt in 1943. She went on to become a famous artist in New York. Martin was just starting out in his work, and as he did shows on the radio and in New York, it put more stress on his marriage. They broke up in the late 1950s, but never got divorced. Martin stayed loyal to Muriel even after they broke up. In 1962, she was told she had breast cancer, and he paid for her care in secret. The sickness wouldn't go away. Muriel died on March 15, 1965, at the age of 47. Martin was shooting the first season of The Wild Wild West at the time. Executives at CBS were worried about production delays, so they wouldn't let him take time off for the funeral. Martin didn't care about them. He flew to New York overnight, said his last goodbye, and then came back to set the next morning without having slept. He said years later, "I never forgiven myself for not being there for her when she needed me the most." He felt bad about what he did and later gave $250,000 to cancer research in her name. Few people knew about Muriel's death for years. It wasn't until Martin got married again in 1967 that everyone knew the truth. When she was 24, Phyllis had a hard time with her dad's choice to move on. After the fact, she said that he loved us, but Hollywood became his real home. Martin got married to Olavi Lucille Parsons in a small wedding in Beverly Hills on September 10, 1967. She used to be a model and made documentaries. She had 2 kids from a past marriage. She was born in 1955, and George was born in 1957. He even changed their birth papers to show that he was their father, which is what is required by law. Some people thought this was an odd choice, but for Martin, it was a way to make their relationship permanent. Rebecca later said that their marriage ran into a big problem right away. Martin almost died of a heart attack in August 1968 during the 4th season of The Wild Wild West. Hobby took care of him full-time. She made sure he took his medicine, sneaked oxygen tanks onto the set, and even talked to CBS about easing up on his work. To keep him on the job, she agreed to take a 30% pay cut. It was a lot of stress. She had a miscarriage in 1969, which Martin never talked about in public. They stayed strong as a family through it all. George, Martin's adopted son, also became an actor and got a part in the 1978 TV movie The New Maverick with the help of his dad. Olavi's impact made Martin try his hand at directing at the same time. He directed 2 episodes of Love, American Style between 1971 and 1973 because she asked him to. They were there for each other through everything, getting through it together. Ross Martin almost quit the part that made him famous. When CBS first asked him to play Artemis Gordon in The Wild Wild West in 1963, he turned them down 4 times. He was done with the Great Race and didn't want to watch TV every week. He was also afraid of being stuck in a certain role. Martin went to Juilliard, spoke 8 languages, and thought TV was a waste of time for artists. He wanted parts that would push him. It wasn't just something that made money. CBS was not going to give up. They really wanted him, so they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. $5,000 for each show, 2 times as much as Robert Conrad was making, using his disguises in creative ways. They even put the pilot on hold for 6 months while they tried to get him to change his mind. He finally agreed, but he had one more thing he wanted. Artemis Gordon would never hit someone. Martin told her that he was a con artist and not a fighter. That made the writers think of new ideas. Artemis used tricks, disguises, and tools like the sleeping gas cigar in Night of the Inferno, 1965, instead of fighting with her fists. It was risky, but it worked out. The first episode of The Wild Wild West aired on September 17, 1965. It didn't take long for Martin to get 3 times as much fan mail as Conrad. Even after all these years, he still couldn't believe how close he had been to throwing it all away. He said in 1978, "I almost ruined my own career. Hey, thanks to Blake Edwards for calling me a fool. That made me change my mind." Martin's best work should have been in films, but he almost gave up on that dream after one part. Blake Edwards cast him as the evil Killer Red Lynch, an experiment in terror in 1962. Columbia Pictures didn't put his name in the trailers or posters, even though it was a scary show. They were worried that people wouldn't believe that the Mr. Lucky Star was a killer. It was meant to make the movie scarier, but it didn't work. While critics loved Lynch's creepy presence, audiences didn't get it. Martin's voice could be heard in 70% of the movie, but his name was nowhere to be found. Worse, when he tried out for other dramatic roles, casting directors turned him down because they thought he was more of a comedy actor. It even cost him a part in The Manchurian Candidate, which went to Lawrence Harvey instead. Even though the movie became a cult favorite, the damage was already done. Martin had stopped getting offers to be in films by 1965, so the actor who used to avoid TV had no choice but to go back to it. Martin had a lot of skill, but his best fight wasn't in Hollywood. It came from his heart. He passed out on a tennis court at the San Vicente Tennis Ranch in Ramona, California, on July 3, 1981. It was a sad finish. After almost dying from a heart attack in 1968, he took up the sport to show how strong he was. In 1975, he had quadruple bypass surgery and was very strict about taking his medicine and working out. It was all not enough. People who saw him said he got dizzy in the middle of a game, stumbled towards a clubhouse, and then fell down just a few feet from the door. In 8 minutes, paramedics arrived, but his heart had stopped beating. Later, firefighter Art Bale remembered that his wife Olavi was yelling, "Don't let him die." They shocked him twice, but it didn't work. He was not there when they got to Pomerado Hospital in Poway. The funeral date was set at 3:17 p.m. The reason was that the left anterior descending artery, which is also known as the Widowmaker, was completely blocked. Later, his doctor told him he could do light exercise, but his willpower was stronger than his body's ability to handle it. Olavi was only 20 feet away when he passed out. Since 1967, she had been his rock. She helped him get through his first heart attack and even snuck oxygen tanks on a Wild Wild West sets to keep him going. She said the Lord's Prayer while her chest was being pressed in the ambulance. When they got to the hospital, she wouldn't leave his side for 6 hours, saying that he was just sleeping. In the end, she sued the San Vicente Tennis Ranch for $1.2 million, saying that the emergency reaction time was too long. The case was solved without going to court. It was almost the same scene that Martin shot in 1968 for Night of the Janus. In that movie, Artemis Gordon faked a heart attack to trick the bad guys. Olavi later said, "Haunted her life imitated art in the worst way." Ross's funeral was held on July 7, 1981, at Mount Sinai Memorial Park in Los Angeles. More than 300 people attended, but there were no speeches or full eulogies. Instead, there was just a rabbi saying the blessings. Robert Conrad was there, and he was shocked. Blake Edwards later said that Ross deserved a send-off as grand as The Great Race, but that wasn't his style. Hollywood didn't say much. There were only proper notices in Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. CBS, which used to pay him more than their main star, didn't send anyone. Conrad was very angry. They canceled his show because it was too violent, but they didn't care about the artist who made it. Even his death certificate made things worse. It said that he was a retired actor, even though he had just filmed an episode of Love Boat 3 months before. Fans never forgot, though. They still go to his grave at Mount Sinai every year on his birthday and leave little violins as a tribute to his most famous part. Leonard Maltin said it best. Ross Martin did not die by himself. That day, Hollywood lost a part of its heart.